Record button. Hey everybody, welcome to June 2nd edition of the MakerDAO community call. And actually, this one is even more special than most. We are partnering with everybody that's participating in DAORUSHWEEK. If you don't know, this week is kind of a week to focus on the human aspect of this emergence of DAOs. And yeah, MakerDAO is definitely a DAO, and there's a lot of humans doing a lot of really cool stuff here. And so I prepared a little something of an agenda to kind of help, I guess, explain what Maker is, how the DAO functions, who's part of the DAO, and all that good stuff. So if you're interested in the slides, I have a public version here. And then, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and we're gonna kick it off, and I'm gonna explain a little bit more about the agenda for the call. And by the way, so anybody feel free to hop on the mic if you have questions. Typically, I'm very happy to make this more discussion oriented rather than like a straight up presentation. And I think for the last half of the call, we're really going to focus more on talking, discussing, and kind of it's going to be fun. We have a couple of members from the MakerDAO community here, and we're going to do some mini interviews, and it's going to be a good time. So let me know if you are able to see my screen. Oh no, you're not. You will be in just a second. Here we go. And then I want to make sure I see the chat, so just bear with me here for just a second. And I want to make sure I could still add people in that are in the waiting room. All right, cool. All right, cool. Yeah, so here we go. So yeah, so you guys have joined the call this week. I know some of you are regulars to the Tuesday call. Typically, we go through kind of what's been going on for the last week at Maker. Mostly governance updates. Sometimes we update about partnerships. We do community highlights. Often we have guests do demos of interesting tech that they're building on this call. But this week we're going to focus a bit on the DAO part of MakerDAO. So this is the agenda for the short presentation I prepared. We're going to do like a quick intro to MakerDAO. We're going to walk through two of the main interfaces that a typical DAO community member, MakerDAO community member uses on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, depending on their level of activity. Then we're going to, I highlighted some changes that were specifically led by community members that I want to go through. I want to talk a little bit about the self-sustaining MakerDAO initiative, because MakerDAO, as many of you know, is currently not fully standing on its own, right? The Maker Foundation is putting in huge effort to bootstrap MakerDAO, and of course, it is a road that we are currently on. So self-sustaining MakerDAO is kind of the vision for the end of the road, but not really the end. It's more like the end of this season and the beginning of the next one, right? Then towards the end of the call, we're going to do maybe a handful of like mini interviews with a few active community members, including Long for Wisdom, who actually was just elected the governance facilitator, the second governance facilitator for MakerDAO, and also Sam M, also known as Hexonaut, who actually you'll see in the third part where the changes led by community members, he actually led quite a few changes, and he is one of the most active members in our community, even to this day. So yeah, I'm gonna quickly hit the accept button on the people waiting, and I'm gonna go ahead and talk about a quick introduction to Maker. So this is how I like to frame Maker. Maker protocol has two products that people can understand the protocol by. The first product is DAI. Of course, DAI is a stablecoin. It's created through vaults. It's backed by collateral. It's censorship resistant, and it's pegged to the US dollar. So DAI, of course, is that solution to cryptocurrency that everybody needs in order to do business, which is like eliminating volatility, right? And so, yeah, so DAI stablecoin is pretty much good for anything. lending, lossless lotteries, remittances, NFT markets, exchange pairs, literally any economic activity. And with that, the second product of the Maker protocol is the Maker Vault. And a vault, formerly known as a CDP, a collateralized debt position, is quite literally that. It's analogous to a secured loan where the person who's generating the DAI, or borrowing is kind of a nuanced term because, I mean, I guess you might be borrowing, but don't take my word for it. You're generating the DAI against your collateral. But basically, it's very analogous to a secured loan where you put up, at least in the first version of DAI, you would put up Ethereum and you'd be able to draw DAI against it. Of course, the Maker protocol isn't just DAI and vaults. It's actually pretty complex. There's an emergency shutdown module. There's a whole voting system. There's a liquidation system. There's the DAI savings rate system. It's quite a symphony of a number of different smart contracts that work together in tandem and are ultimately the MakerDAO protocol, the Maker protocol. So yeah. MakerDAO, it's a DAO, right? Who makes the changes to all of these crazy modules and parameters? Who makes the additions? Who does the bug fixes? Who does the management? Some of the changes that can be made, actually, I wanted to highlight. So there's vault-specific parameters, right? There's auction parameters, there's debt ceilings for individual vault types, there's stability fees, there's liquidation penalties. You can onboard new collateral types or vault types. You could adjust existing ones. You could do protocol upgrades, like updating the voting system or the liquidation system. There's emergency shutdown, which is a whole conversation on its own. There's also social layer changes. And eventually, there's also going to be things like managing a treasury and having to deal with spending decisions as a protocol. So who controls and influences Maker? Well, there's kind of two ways that you could see it, right? There's people who own MKR. MKR is the native governance token of the Maker protocol. There used to be a supply of 1 million, but currently there's a supply of 1,005,000 and some change. And we can get into that actually in the discussion session if you're interested. But Maker holders make all the ultimate decisions about the Maker protocol through on-chain governance. So any change that happens, anything that really happens has to go through an on-chain vote. And so MKR holders are the ultimate gatekeepers to changes made to the protocol. However, they're not the only ones who influence the decision-making and can make an impact to how the protocol is governed, right? So there's a whole element of off-chain governance that people don't realize. You don't have to hold MKR to be influential, right? There's no MKR required for signing up on our forum, for example, and even voting on the polls found in the forums. And for those coming into the call right now, welcome. I think I shared these slides for people to come in and check out if you're interested. I think I have a slightly more updated version here, but that's the public link. But anyway, back to the presentation. Yeah, so yeah, you don't have to hold MKR to be influential. You can go and participate in the forums and invest your intellectual capital and argue for changes that make sense or argue against changes that don't seem to make sense. Online vocal community members are the influencers who really affect the change in MakerDAO. And MKR votes confirm or deny their sentiments, right? As far as we know, it could be that the majority of people on our forum are MKR holders, but I'm sure many aren't. And actually, it brings into question kind of the idea of who is MakerDAO. Is it just the MKR holders? Or is it more? Is it also the stakeholders? Is it the market makers that hold DAI inventories? Is it the various dApps in the ecosystem that integrated DAI and use DAI? And my personal opinion is that, of course, all stakeholders are part of the DAO, and because of the public nature of the management of the protocol, anybody with a reasonable voice can and enough will can definitely enact changes and lead changes in the protocol, and it's been done, right? So that was a quick introduction to MakerDAO. So for those of you that weren't familiar with Maker before the call, I just wanted to throw that in there and not assume that everybody just knows, right? So here's a quick interface walkthrough. There's two main sites. Vote.makerdao.com is the voting portal that the Maker Foundation created. And forum.makerdao.com is the forum that the foundation facilitates, right? And just a quick note, anybody can spin up a voting portal. So you don't have to vote through the foundation's front end. Anybody can actually create an application that plugs into the Maker protocol's voting system, since it's all on chain. But of course, the foundation is bootstrapping stuff, and we have this lovely voting portal and a lovely forum to work with. So the first thing I'm going to show you guys is and gals is the voting portal. So it's fairly simple. I hope it loads. Yeah, here it is. So I'm on a wallet that does not have a voting proxy set up, but if you were to be an MKR holder, this is basically the voting portal. You'd have an option to set up a voting contract. It takes about 5 minutes, and you could link a hot or a cold wallet, or actually, interestingly, a combination of both, to the voting portal to let you vote on chain with your MKR. And as you can see currently, the way it works is there's two different types of votes. There's executive voting and governance polling. And right now we're looking at the executive voting page. So this proposal is the governing proposal. So executive votes work in a very interesting manner. Once another executive proposal is put up, it has to surpass the amount of MKR that's in support of the previous proposal. This means that, you know, this 80,000 MKR we were looking at, it could turn into 60 because 20,000 of it moved to the new proposal. And then this proposal will be able to basically supersede the old one. And so that's basically how executive voting works. And I'm not going to get into very much depth about this. I just want to give you guys a bit of a primer. And so here's governance polling. So executive votes, by the way, are kind of the last step of any real on-chain change, and actually are integral to also some social changes through the MIPS process, but I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. So here, polling is a bit different. So polling doesn't actually enact changes, hard code changes to the protocol. It's very much a tool to measure MKR holder sentiment. So every Monday, we have a series of votes, and they vary depending on the stage of the governance cycle that we're in. And as you could see right now, actually, as of yesterday, 3 different votes were put up, one for a base rate adjustment, which is the base rate for the stability fees of all vaults. There's also a vote on using ranked choice voting for a certain type of vote that we regularly vote on, and a debt ceiling adjustment vote. And any MKR holder can come in, you know, it's either a yes or no, or it's a range of percentages, and soon, I wish I had an example of it, but soon there's also a ranked choice voting module that works here. Yeah, and feel free to jump in and ask questions. Totally happy to answer anybody. All right, so yeah, that's the basic, very, very basic voting portal. Also for the emergency shutdown, there's a module here. By the way, don't send your MKR here or it will be burned. That's part of the design of emergency shutdown. So if you're curious, it takes 50,000 MKR to be deposited here to initiate a shutdown, and that will, quote unquote, gracefully unwind the system. But that 50,000 MKR is burnt, and the only way you could ever get it back is when the system's redeployed. If Maker governance decides that it was appropriately shut down, they will relaunch with that allocation given back to the depositor, in theory, right? So all right, yeah, that's a quick overview of the voting portal. I also wanted to show everyone the forum. So if you're a regular in the community, you know that all of the major discussions really happen on the forum. So we do have weekly governance calls and these weekly community calls just to bring people up to date. But the main place where majority of the discussion happens, where majority of the sentiment building happens, is here on the forum. So, so users have a number of ways to kind of navigate this. Most people kind of look for the things they might be interested in, right? So like Black Thursday, for example, you know, will conjure up a number of different options, including tags. So the community is very, very careful about tagging posts appropriately. So, you know, you could look up stuff like vault compensation and it'll pull up a page with literally everything that mentions vault compensation or has been tagged vault compensation. You could do, what's another fun one? MIPS, right? You could just search up MIPS and, oh no, I did something wrong. And then you could kind of filter it by tag. You know, you could filter by category. You could look at the top ones, the unread ones, et cetera, et cetera. But what's interesting about the forum is that on various, you know, on various occasions, there are sentiment kind of building. I wish I had pulled up an example beforehand, but you know, here, maybe here's a good one. It was on the previous, yeah, here it is. So if you don't know, actually, this is kind of a cool thing to mention. So, so the community actually recently greenlighted a Maker source cred trial, which is a way to incentivize the governance community for contributing to things. And it's a really interesting project. There's actually a great presentation that Dandelion Main shared with us. I believe it was last week, if not the governance call before. And I could share a link to that video presentation after if you're interested. But part of this was, this trial was proposed, and then there was, you know, a forum vote. And of course, this isn't, you know, fully MKR holders, right? There's no way currently of figuring out if people voting on the forum are MKR holders or not. But nevertheless, this is a highly representative kind of group of the community that decided to go forward with this. And of course, this is just one example, but there are actually guidelines for how to do signal threads, where as a community member, you can come in, raise a concern, start up a discussion, and then at the appropriate time, put up a signal thread or a poll to kind of gauge the sentiment of the community. Yeah, so yeah, that was kind of just a super brief walkthrough of the couple of major interfaces that that people in the community regularly use, at least people who vote. Some other ones I mentioned, oh no, down here are chat. Well, hold on one second, let me just let people into the room. Okay, cool. Yeah, so a few other ones that I mentioned down below are chat.makerdao.com, which is a really great place to talk with people kind of real time. You know, the foundation uses chat.makerdao.com, so you'll find a ton of the foundation employees available there. And also the majority of active community members are there, and they're talking current events in channels like governance and risk, in channels like MIPS, in channels like community development, which is where I tend to spend most of my time. And yeah, the other two sites are communitydevelopment.makerdao.com. This site is actually getting a major facelift over the next 2 months, but it kind of lists all of the off-chain initiatives and contributing opportunities and granting programs that we have available through the foundation, and just ways that people can participate in the DAO without necessarily voting. And then the last one I added is kind of my first pet project, which was awesome.makerdao.com. And huge shout out to Scott Entrepreneur for kickstarting it, because originally it was Awesome Die, which is kind of an iteration of the Awesome lists. If you're not familiar with those, they're pretty cool. But yeah, if you go to awesome.makerdao.com, it's just a huge resource dump. You can hit Control F or Command F if you're on a Mac. That is your friend. And you could search up stuff. There's tutorials, there's articles written by community members, there's tons of governance resources in there, et cetera, et cetera. So these are just some of the kind of go-to resources for people at MakerDAO. All right, so we did the quick introduction to MakerDAO. We did the quick interface walkthrough. next, I wanted to kind of highlight some changes that were recently led by community members. And so I selected 4, and I selected them specifically because they were initiated by and led by community members. So like several things in MakerDAO are kind of the obvious next move. And as part of that, you know, it's almost like they're almost auto-initiated, right? Thinking about stuff like launching multi-collateral DAI or shutting single collateral DAI down. Of course, these are things that had to happen and that the members of the community certainly had huge input and contributed to. But these 4 have really sprung up at the root from the community. So the first one is adding the functionality of ranked choice voting as an option for governance polls. This was actually spearheaded by Sam M, who's actually on the call. And it came into fruition. It started off as a discussion thread in the forums. It went through a series of signal polls on the forums, and then it went to a governance poll, and finally was passed. I don't think that there's actually an MIP for it, but that probably will happen eventually. The second one is electing a community member, Long for Wisdom, to occupy the governance facilitator role. This is actually a very recent development, and maybe I might have lied because Rich Brown actually was the one who nominated Long and said it was kind of time to have a community member be fill this role. So the third one was changes to how we understand and vote on stability fees. So for the last 6 months, we have transformed the way that we vote on stability fees. It used to be, individual rate changes. First it started off with changing voting on the DAI savings rate from, voting directly on what the rate should be to voting on the spread. What should the spread be between the DAI savings rate and the stability fee, or the base rate of the stability fee now. And so Sam M also was a huge catalyst and spearheaded this project, and with his help and a ton of other community members, we were able to get it through. And now we have, as you saw just a few minutes ago, a base rate vote, which is part of this. And by the way, if you have the slides, the public version of the slides, you can click on any of these and it'll link you to the thread itself that kind of originated the idea, or the signal request thread, but usually the thread that originated the idea is linked. But yeah, so feel free to explore if you're interested. And then the last one was changing monetary policy votes to ranked choice, which you saw in the governance portal today. We're currently voting on that. So all of these things originated in the forum and ended in on-chain votes. So just wanted to highlight that to emphasize the bridge between off-chain and on-chain governance. So what are individuals in the DAO doing off-chain? So obviously there's more to MakerDAO than just voting on chain. Members of the community have been contributing to educational resources, holding meetups all around the world, now virtually. They've been experimenting with incentive structures for participating in governance. For example, the source cred trial that I mentioned earlier. They've been giving feedback on the forum about various maker improvement proposals and everything really. They've been forming working groups. Here are some examples. There's a community-driven governance messaging working group, which is a really kind of messy name for saying, how does the DAO have a voice? Especially for MakerDAO that's being bootstrapped by the foundation, how does the public community of Maker governance have a voice for itself? Who's in charge of that? Who's elected to do that? And that's kind of one of the emerging working groups. There's also a Black Thursday Vault compensation working group. MakerMan, Long for Wisdom, and a number of others are a part of it and have produced a really great report and are continuing to do work towards that end. By the way, just quick mention, Long for Wisdom wrote in the chat, I forgot to mention, so the community-driven governance messaging group, if anybody is interested in that, I highly recommend you check out the forum thread and reach out to myself, Long for Wisdom, Timothy Black, or yeah, just comment on that thread and somebody might reach out to you. But we are definitely looking for people who are interested in, yeah, being a part of that working group. Wire Ops TV asked, is messaging for the optics perception positioning, or quite literally, how does the DAO communicate to the holders for votes, polls, yada, 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 yada? It's kind of both. It's optics, perception, positioning, addressing like common criticism in like crisis moments like Black Thursday, for example. But it is also, how do you distribute information on what part of the governance cycle we're in right now? What are the available votes right now? How do you inform people in a way that doesn't require them themselves to spend 20 hours a week keeping up with everything, right? So it's a bit of both. And by the way, feel free to hop on the mic if you're interested. Mode asks, are everybody volunteering? So a number of people are volunteering, and actually the Maker Foundation provides a ton of DAI for microgrants for active contributors. So we definitely pay people out in working groups. So it's not like free work. If you're doing anything substantial, we, as part of our culture, believe you should be compensated for the work that you do. So some people do volunteer, do pro bono work, but many people are getting paid.
Thanks, David, for organizing this. I
Yeah,
just have a
sure.
quick question.
Sure.
When do we forcefully, what do you call it, shut down the DAO? What are the situations? Was it ever shut down?
So you're talking about emergency shutdown?
Oh, yeah, was it shut down? Yeah.
Yeah, so single collateral DAI actually just went through an emergency shutdown. So I guess one of the scenarios is, for example, a major protocol upgrade, but that's like not anywhere in the near future from this point on. I mean, it might be. It could also be as a result of like a very serious exploit in the code being found and like an inability to deal with it, or like some immediate threat that would harm user funds and all of that. It's basically for emergency scenarios. I hope that like sufficiently answers your question, but it leads into my next point, which the last working group that I mentioned was actually a DeFi consortium on emergency shutdown criterion. So emergency shutdown is one of the most under explored aspects of the Maker protocol. There's definitely work to be done, communication to be done with other projects in the space that rely on DAI. And I also highly recommend anybody who's interested in being part of that working group to reach out to Richard Cullard Lopez, who's the author of the thread that I linked here. And actually, I think I could just throw the link here since I'm talking about it.
And also, do we have where you can read more about the governance of MakerDAO? You have like rules, regulation, how was it made? I just want to read more.
Yeah, absolutely. We have some stuff. We have like a really great FAQ that was recently released. It's pretty up to date, but yeah, we could talk a little bit after the presentation, and I could link some stuff in the chat, and I could also add some stuff to the public slides that I've shared.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, no
I
problem.
see there are any rules or regulations really, other than like kind of obvious. Don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick. It's like rule number one. Yeah. So hold on, let me just quickly catch up because I think there's one more. There's one more question. Oh yeah, Wolf asked about community-driven governance messaging. Yeah, so here you go, Wolf. You could check out this thread. It links to a number of other related things. So yeah, feel free to check that out. No problem. All right, cool. So back to business. So what are individuals in the DAO doing off-chain, right? They're forming working groups. They're building tools. Several analytics dashboards exist now, including mkrgov.science, dai.decipher.io, vaults.decipher.io, loans.decipher.io, and a number of others. And it's really interesting because they tend to go through cycles of like defunctness and then being brought up to date. And so hopefully we have an even richer and more sustained ecosystem of analytics dashboards in the future. But of course, these are early days. Yeah, we're rebuilding the community development portal. That's largely an effort done by people in the community rather than by foundation employees. We are treated actually as a client in that project. People are building UIs for participating in auctions. That's another example. And of course, like, this is totally incomplete. I definitely missed a lot of things, but this is just a small picture of the things that people that identify as part of MakerDAO do off-chain besides vote, right? So those were just some changes led by community members. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about self-sustaining MakerDAO. And as I mentioned, you know, MakerDAO right now is largely being bootstrapped by the Maker Foundation. So you know, a lot of the spend for just various things is quite literally handled by the foundation. So for the next short, medium term, there's kind of three main things that are the aim of the foundation in helping MakerDAO become self-sustaining and truly decentralized and not need to have those kinds of proverbial training wheels on. So the first is elected paid contributors and domain teams. We've actually already ratified several domain teams, a Risk team, an Oracle team, a smart contracts team, and we've even ratified a few different roles in the community, like governance facilitators and MIP editors and MIP writers, and those and all of these kind of individuals and teams fall under this this concept of an elected paid contributor, somebody that the Maker somebody that gets paid directly by the Maker protocol. The next is Maker improvement proposals. This is a framework that has been introduced very recently. We're actually in the second governance cycle for MIPS, and a governance cycle, really briefly, is just a single month. Oh yeah, sorry. Long for Wisdom just pointed out the Risk team technically isn't ratified yet, so sorry about that. But soon, hopefully, they will be. Yeah, Maker improvement proposals, they are kind of a really important tool for making the community have an easier time self-organizing, giving community members an easier way to propose changes to the system rather than just like one-off forum threads until like somebody notices, right? And it kind of just creates a very transparent and standard process that is aimed at making the entire Maker protocol governance a lot more efficient. And then the last kind of ingredient to the vision of self-sustaining MakerDAO is the ability to have vote delegates. You know, not everybody with MKR wants to vote. But for the game theory of the system, you know, the more MKR voting, the more secure the system is. So it's going to be a bit of a shift in the atmosphere from how things are now, where we don't have a vote delegation system, to the near future, where people will be able to delegate their MKR to public individuals in the community that have a good track record of voting and of stances on issues. And more, yeah. So those are kind of the three big picture views of like the things that are to come. And so yeah. I hope that presentation wasn't too burdensome. I hope it was interesting to you guys and gals. But the next part, we're going to do a few mini interviews with some active community members, and then just some open discussion for any questions you guys might have that we could help answer. And again, if you want to get involved, definitely join us on the chat, on the forum. Check out awesomemakerDAO.com. You could even submit a pull request and add to it. Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing my screen there. All right, cool. So yeah, thank you for bearing with me. So all right, we have a couple people here, and I wanted to, I guess, first introduce Long for Wisdom. So Long, if you are here, definitely grab the mic. I guess to start, hey. I guess to start, I wanted to ask, like, when did you join the Maker community, MakerDAO? Like, what's your story behind like being involved for the last 6 months, especially since that multi-collateral DAI release? And yeah, I guess we could start there.
Sure. Okay. Well, I mean, I got involved like it's been like about a year ago now, maybe a little bit less.
A year, right?
I think so. Yeah, I kind of lose track.
Me too.
But yeah, so I originally got involved in got interested in Maker like when I read the kind of the white paper ages ago, and I kind of understood the kind of mechanism design behind the actual protocol, which I found interesting at the time.
Yeah.
Um,
How hard was it to break into the community or like have a voice? Did you find it easy when you first came in, or was it difficult?
I mean, it felt difficult, but like I don't think actually it was that difficult, right? Like it's just the usual issues you have with like communicating with a new group of people and things, and like yeah, I don't know, trying to like get involved, I guess.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So, what do you feel maybe is like the largest missing piece in MakerDAO right now, from your view?
Not just missing piece.
Yeah.
I don't know really. Like, there's quite a lot of things that we need to sort out. I guess probably the core thing that I think is important is going to be attracting like new community members, getting more people involved, more people actively doing things. Again, like paid or unpaid.
Right. Right.
Because I think there's kind of a lot of stuff that we've got to manage in the protocol. So there's kind of a lot of work to be done. But so yeah, it's sort of the more people that can get involved, the better, really.
Right on. Right on. Let's see, what other questions that I prepared beforehand? So, okay, maybe here's another one. What are you most looking forward to in the next year or so?
Jesus, again, it's hard to like predict what's going to be happening that far.
Yeah, it is hard, but I guess that's a testament to the nature of the protocol, because like I guess even
Space in
6 months
general.
ago the space in general especially, but even 6 months ago things were completely different even in our community.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing how. So we just introduced the MIPS process that David mentioned a couple of slides back. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that kind of like evolves and how that sort of starts to be used, and sort of how much it's used, and how much kind of discussion things changes gather, and all sorts of.
If you were to give the MIPS process a probability of success, like a percentage, what would it be?
It's hard. Like above 50. Like I think it's gonna go.
50? Oh, that's low.
Above
I
50.
could have sworn you would have been more on the higher side. Okay.
Yeah, I am on the higher side. Yeah,
Fair enough.
maybe. I don't know, maybe 70 or 80. Like
We'll see.
again, I think it's one of those things that kind of depends again on participation and things.
Yeah.
Contributions. Like,
Right.
It's kind of gonna live and die by the people that like try to use it. So it's like, yeah, either people will pick it up and start using it as like the way to interact with or make changes to the protocol.
Right.
Or people will just find it like too burdensome and then like won't interact with it, and it will just kind of disappear.
Yeah, I think one of the big kind of limiting factors for Maker, like for the last few years even, is kind of the discoverability of how does one take action, right? And there was no clear like guidebook, is actually like my experience from when I joined the community. So like, I think the MIPS process will give people just a way clearer like method to get things done, right? A method to affect change.
Yeah, hopefully.
So I have a question, David. How many members are there in MakerDAO now, active members? And did you face any situation where you see the same people voting?
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people not actively participating. So doesn't it create
Sure.
vote fatigue and all those things? You face a problem, and I just want to know.
Yeah, sure. So when I checked yesterday, I used this number as a proxy because it's kind of hard. Like I personally don't know of any like major list of like everybody who's considered in MakerDAO, but the monthly, like the 30-day active users on our forums, I think is around 450 unique accounts, and of course, definitely not all of them are voting with MKR. Many of them might be just showing up for a single issue that concerns them. They might be like part of the community, but I'd say like the core governance community might be like maybe 100 people, something like that. In terms of the voting activity, and Longfro isn't totally like give me your opinion because I might be off base there. What do you think?
There's been over 400 addresses voting on MCD. So
Oh, nice.
In,
Nice.
in terms
Yeah.
of like core governance contributors, like on the forum, I would say it's like close to like 20,
20, yeah.
if not less.
And you have each of the proposals, you have a deadline, right? And minimum number of threshold of votes, right? You face a situation where, for example, you required like 100 active voters, but you just got 50 in deadline.
So
Like,
the number of voters actually does not really matter for on-chain voting. What matters is the amount of MKR. So although this is kind of like a controversial topic to many people, is that MakerDAO is actually kind of a plutocracy. Like if the more MKR you own, the more skin in the game you have, and the more power you have to either affect change or veto change. So you know, in some cases, it'll take a single address to tip a vote, and in other cases, it'll take 3 or 4. And also, just a note on the consistency over time of people's voting behavior. It tends to be that whenever there's like a crisis or a really important matter, MKR comes pouring in out of the woodwork, right? The funds, the individuals, everybody starts voting. But then when you get into kind of this 2 months of boring monetary policy votes, is the DAI peg a little bit high, you know, like has it hit 0 yet? You see a drop off in the number of both addresses and like raw MKR weight. And Long, if you're talking, I think you're muted because I see your box.
No,
light.
I was going to say,
Okay.
you said hit 0, and I was like, no, well, that's very bad. Hit 1 for the DAI peg.
Yeah, right. What has it hit 1? Yeah, we don't want DAI to hit 0 under no circumstance. But yeah, so it turns out that on-chain voting behavior, which mkrgov.science, I could link it, is a really great tool to kind of look at that. But yeah, I would say that in times when there's like a really important issue, a lot of people come out. We've actually had votes, executive votes with over 100,000 MKR get passed within a day. You know, we saw that during Black Thursday, for example. But yeah, when things get boring, when there's no like serious changes, we see these moments where executive votes that should go through theoretically, they kind of stagnate and it takes them like a week to get through, or they don't get through at all. I think there was actually a recent vote that didn't get passed. And by the way, that might not mean that, you know, it's MKR voters are just, you know, not paying attention. It could very well also be like a deliberate no, because like when you vote in an executive vote, a no vote is the equivalent of just keeping your MKR on the original, like on the current governing proposal. So yeah, I hope that answers your question a bit.
yeah, thanks. It really answers the question. But I was thinking in the future, like the thing with the plutocracy is that I would say I guess more than 80% wouldn't bother if you see that if few people vote more MKR over time. Don't you think it won't give any incentive for them to start voting because they'll say, okay, I don't have much NPR, I don't have much power. Like,
yeah. So that's, I think I definitely, there's 100% validity to that point. But that's the importance of getting things like vote delegation out there. If you have, I don't know, 50, 100 voters, each with like less than 10 MKR, you know, you start to assemble kind of a considerable representation. And also, like, if you don't want to do the work yourself, if you're not like inclined to have a comment on every single issue, you could, you know, you could delegate your votes. You can come in and even just make comment. Let me pause. Let me try to like form my answer a little bit cleaner. Yes, it's definitely an issue for smaller holders to have voter apathy. And yeah, vote delegation is definitely a tool that will help with that. And if people are delegating their vote and they see that the person that they delegated the vote to is voting against their interest, they could pull their weight out, right? Like hopefully very easily, because I don't know what the vote delegation system looks like or what the limitations are right now. But yeah, that's definitely an issue. But again, if you have relatively little stake in the game compared to some other people, you should still be able to trust the fact that the people with the most stake kind of have the most to lose, and so should make the best decisions. that's kind of the game theoretical ideal logic, right?
Yeah, thanks for answering the question. And is there any way we could see the delegates, like what they stand for? Like it's like a candidate for
Hopefully.
election.
So the vote delegation is kind of something that's on the roadmap. I don't know. Maybe Long for Wisdom might have some better info than I do about it, but I think that there is. Actually, go for it, Long. I see you
Sure.
unmuted.
Yeah, I know part of the plan is to have like a place where the delegates can like kind of clearly explain what they're voting for, why they're voting for it, right? Like that would be part of the kind of solution for delegates, I think.
Yeah.
Somewhere where they can like publish what they're voting for and why.
Yeah, you
David,
probably have like a profile page. Yeah, sure. What's up, Wolf?
hi. This is really interesting. So I'm an academic. I've written many papers on voting structures and decentralized systems. Can you say a little bit about the relationship, and I'm sorry if I missed it, the relationship between the governance token and the DAI itself? Is there,
Yeah, sure.
was there ever a community proposal to link the two?
So they are already linked from like a smart contract perspective. So if you looked at the protocol, it has a built-in governance, like a set of smart contracts that are the governance, right? And it has kind of that's like the only way to have authority to make changes into the system. But DAI on the other end is like a result of people using vaults, right? Which is a whole other section of the protocol that is, the product of the Maker protocol, right? This tool. So they are linked. If you can maybe expand on what you mean more by link.
Sure. So I've written a paper on this. So in essence, the idea would be if you vote and exercise your opinion in the governance token, you should be paid in DAI. In other words, the higher your stake is in the governance token, the more you get proportionally paid in DAI out of a DAI pool, right? So I've written 2 mathematical models on this, and I haven't seen anybody get as close as the MakerDAO is right now. So I'm really interested in trying to find out if that's at least a side arm, a separate subsidiary DAO of sorts, or if that was discussed in the community. I'm sorry,
No, sure. That's a totally good question. I see Long might want to take it.
Can I? So.
Yeah.
In some ways, the protocol kind of already does this. Like, it doesn't reward voters in DAI, like explicitly, but as like Maker is burned, like the value accrues to all of the other tokens. So that does mean that voters with like large stakes, so like large amounts of the token, do like gain more value in theory than holders with like less of the tokens, right? So while there isn't like a sort of it's not distributed in DAI, like in theory that value transfer is there.
It's like analogous to like a stock buyback plus like a burn, like a deletion of the stock itself from like the total supply. It's something like that, which is like the mechanism for compensating MKR holders for the risk that they take. Because ultimately, when the protocol loses money, the opposite happens. Instead of Maker being burned, it's actually issued, and we saw that as a result of Black Thursday. Just what is it? 3 months ago now, 2 months ago now. 2.5 months ago now. But, so the protocol had to raise, I think, $5 million. And the way it did it was it issued lots of MKR, and it auctioned it in chunks of 50,000 DAI per issuance. And I think there was a total of something like 50 different auctions. And the protocol made itself solvent again by that type of issuance. But then there's like another aspect to your question. So it's incentive for participation in the voting system through something like staking rewards or something like that. And this has been a conversation that's definitely been present in our community for the last few years. But it's the main criticism of it is that it would invite a lot of low quality votes. It would people would just set up a bot to vote on anything and just collect whatever the stake is. Hopefully, that's just theory, of course, but I think that the idea is still very early in the community. But I'm sure that there might be experiments that play around with those kinds of incentive structures. So yeah. So I hope I covered kind of both senses in which I think you were asking the question about, but yeah.
I had a question about Black Thursday. Do you think it's convenient that I ask now?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
You were mentioning that a lot of millions were lost. You just pointed to 5 million. I think I read somewhere it was like 24. So if there's someone from the community that can tell, because from what I read, a lot of new money was printed thanks to that unfortunate event. But I don't think it's actually unfortunate because the market is pretty smart as well. There was someone arbitraging beautifully, putting a very, very 0.00 nothing and bought a lot of Maker because, like, I mean, bots are not stupid. So whoever placed that order had something in mind. And the fact that there were no keepers around was also a big deal. I read briefly about, but I don't have a lot of knowledge about. Do you think you can point me to like podcasts and videos or like post-mortem that was
So I think there was
released?
actually a post-mortem that was released by the foundation, and I think there was even
Scott, I
other.
think, just like.
Yeah, Scott did post it. So, so to answer a little bit more details about that, yeah, I think that the loss to the protocol was something like 5.4 or 5.6 million DAI that had to be basically accounted for. We had to raise money by MKR issuance to replace that. But then also there was the victims of the zero bid auctions where, you know, there was like this perfect storm of network congestion, node syncing issues, kind of, yeah, a mix of issues that enabled this person to exploit the liquidation system and basically get, I think it was like $7 million at the time worth of Ethereum, pretty much for pennies. But yeah, so between the Ethereum stolen and the money lost in the protocol, I think that was like 12 or 13 million. But yeah, feel free to read the postmortems. I think there's a yeah, there's definitely better numbers than I can give you there. All right, and then one more person I want to interview because I did promise plural amount of interviews of community members. So Sam McPherson, who is also a longtime community member, is here, and he's definitely spearheaded a few different changes in the protocol. And I wanted to invite you, Sam, to the mic and tell us a bit about the origin story. How'd you find out about Maker? When did you join?
Yeah, thanks, David. Thanks for having me. So I became aware of Maker in January 2018. I read the white paper. I found it very interesting, and it was just launching at that time with single collateral DAI. I kind of like stayed just watching and, you know, silently voting and stuff. I watched all the governance calls right as soon as they started. I think the first one was in June or July of 2018. So I watched all those happen, and then I started taking a more active role just after multi-collateral DAI came out.
Those were the good old days when Stephen Becker was still doing like the presentations every week.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember those.
Yep. So yeah, I took a more active role after multi-collateral DAI came out, just because you know, there wasn't really much to do with single collateral DAI. We were just week to week voting on a like up or down stability fee. So once we had sort of a bunch of different fees and like the savings rate and stuff like that, you know, there's just stuff to be done at that point. So I started putting together some of my thoughts on how to improve the system.
Yeah, definitely. I think a huge catalyst to what enabled, I think you, and tell me if I'm wrong, is firstly like the launch of the forums. Like I remember we used to only use like Reddit and the chat for a while, and then finally like the forum came out and things became a little bit more like organized.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean,
yeah
I remember the first attempt at governance with the MKR Gov subreddit.
Yeah.
It worked for a little bit, okay, but you know, Reddit like kind of attracts low quality comments after a while. Like you can only kind of hide for so long.
Oh yeah,
So it's not the best. The launch of the forum was great, I think.
right.
Really helpful.
Gives like the ability for polls and all these cool things.
Yeah,
If you
for
think
sure.
community is bad, I guess Quora is even more worse.
Yeah, I mean, there's no shortage of like shitty people on the internet, you know, like unfortunately. But there's also no shortage of really great, insightful, talented people.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Sam, what do you feel is the largest missing piece in MakerDAO right now?
The largest missing piece. I would say, I think this is kind of true of the entire Ethereum ecosystem, just sort of like mainstream adoption. This stuff is such a small group right now still. And like, I think we need to see that killer app that's going to just bring on several million users.
Oh yeah, Cash App with layer 2 scaling and DAI instead of dollars.
Yeah,
Or
something like
something, right? Yeah, cool. Good answer. I think I'd agree with you. What about internal to like our community and like the protocol itself?
What's missing? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, like the largest missing piece, or maybe like there's a some baby piece that significantly needs to be like developed. There's a few of those.
For the most part, I think the governance process has been running pretty well.
Yeah.
Like we're trucking along at a good rate. I think we're like bringing on like MIPS and all these new sort of governance tools as we need them. And yeah, there's nothing really offhand. Like there's tons of little improvements that need to be done, but nothing stands out as a major improvement in my opinion.
Yeah, nice. All right. Well, just a quick note. It's 1 p.m., so we're at the top of the hour and technically at the end of the call. I think I'm gonna run it. Actually, I do have to hop off. I have a call in a couple minutes. So sorry to cut this super short, but thank you guys for joining the call. I hope this was educational and interesting to you. If you're interested in getting involved, definitely come on chat.makerdao.com. Definitely join us on the forums. If you're interested in anything specific, feel free to reach out to me. My handle is David Utro, pretty much everywhere: Twitter, Telegram, the forum, the chat, everywhere. And so, yeah, come join us. It's a really interesting DAO to be a part of. And thank you, Long and Sam, for joining, and everybody else who is a regular around here.